I think we have a vocabulary problem as men. And I think when we hear certain words, we shut down. I think shame is one of those words. I think toxic, toxicity, is a word that's really bringing us some level of shame. And so we don't really want to talk further about that. And so I look for ways to help guys express themselves emotionally without shutting down. And I don't use the word weakness. They don't use the word weakness. I ask the question, when did you feel least like a man?
Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sullivan. We're focused on lead dads, working moms, and how small changes at home or work can have a big impact on their lives. Each episode promises to deliver actionable advice on some area of concern at home or at work. Short, direct, again, actionable. 5 questions, 5 answers. Today, our guest is Jim Chastain, a father of 2 adult children, a boy and a girl. Jim spent his career doing high-level market research at a firm he founded called Reality Check. His goal was to tell companies what their customers really wanted to buy, something you think they'd know, but often they did not. A native of St. Louis, he's recently divorced and divides his time now between New York, Colorado, and San Francisco. He's turned his research eye to men in an effort to figure out what holds them back. This is exactly the type of reality check we love on the Company of Dads podcast. Welcome, Jim, for being our guest today.
Thanks for having me, Paul. This is really fun.
I'm going to be honest up front here, not just because people watching this on video will see the big red dot on my nose generated by one of my daughters banging into me. I'm going to be honest in a different way that we may cheat here, Jim, on the 5 questions for the first time because I think I'm going to have a lot of questions for you. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Do I get paid more for each additional question then?
Only if your answers are good. If not, then we'll edit them out and it'll look funny because it'll only be 3 at the end. And people will say they promised more than 5 and now they're only 3. So,
oh my God. Well,
no pressure, Jim.
It's not going to be my problem. Okay? It's not going to be my problem.
All right. So one of the things you focused on with your research is what you call the 5 core insights that hold men back. And so question 1, what are these insights? Don't leave us hanging here. But 2, how did you come up with them? How did you realize that these were the 5 things that often hold men back?
I have discussions with guys about things they don't typically talk about, and so that's
for example.
I ask some questions like, "Tell me about the time when you felt most like a man. Tell me about the time when you felt least like a man. Tell me about your masculine influences growing up. Tell me about them now. Tell me about a time when you felt really ashamed, or tell me about a time when you felt really proud." So I get them to talk about things or to stop and think about things, I should say, that they're not used to talking about.
Those are tough questions. I mean, when you ask them, is there often like an extended pause, or are they coming right back at you and say, "Oh yeah, this is the time I felt most like a man or least like a man"?
A little bit of both. Some guys kind of know that off the top of their head, which is a little shocking when you think about it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times guys say, "I need to think about that for a minute." And which is, by the way, exactly what I want them to do. Because I think
what's the difference though? Because I think I'd have to think about it for a minute. What's the difference between the guys who geez, that's a good question. Let me think about it for a minute. And the guys who like immediately know, but here's the answer. Is there any difference?
I feel like the guys who are honest and say that they want to stop and think about it are really going to give me a thoughtful answer. And I feel like the guys who respond quickly are often guys who do what a lot of us do as men, which is, I want to tell you what I know as quickly as I possibly can.
So not going deeper down, like giving you like a superficial answer.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things about that question, by the way, or the answers to that question, are the least like a man uh, answers all have a common theme, which I'll tell you about. But what's not in the least like a man answers is I got beat up,
Right.
or like physically intimidated in some way. Um, at least like a man answers are almost all, I'd say 99% of the guys I've talked to, the least like a man answers are moments when they felt they were revealing weakness.
Hmm.
I can't. A time when I couldn't afford to buy my girlfriend dinner. She had to pay. I just lost my job, and I had to go home and tell my spouse.
Wow.
Um, you know, it's stuff that really hits to the core of kind of weakness and a word I don't like to use very much, shame, that men carry with them. And so, getting them to stop and talk about that and say that out loud is actually a really healthy thing for them. And I'm not a therapist, so I'm not trying to, help them in that way. But
I'm not trying to help him. I'm just trying to put him in an awkward position. There's no help being
you,
provided
Paul,
here.
I am trying to help. Okay.
Thanks. Why don't you like to use the word shame, but you're okay using the word weakness?
I think that we have, I think we have a vocabulary problem as men.
Okay.
And I think when we hear certain words, we shut down. I think shame is one of those words. I think toxic, toxicity, is a word that's really bringing us some level of shame, and so we don't really want to talk further about that.
Yeah.
And so I look for ways to help guys express themselves emotionally without shutting down. And I don't use the word weakness. They don't use the word weakness. I ask the question, when did you feel least like a man?
And then you quickly beat them in arm wrestling just to drive home that point. Is that what you do, Jim?
Yeah, and then I beat them in arm wrestling. And then I swear at them. I tell them, that they're the punk that I thought they would be, stuff like that, just to get them to open up.
Just to prove that you're not a therapist and you're not there to help. Right. I like this.
Right. Exactly.
All right. You didn't tell me the 5, but I don't care because you've told me before, so I know what they are. So I can.
Okay.
That's going to be the next 5 questions there.
Okay, great.
We may have more than that. So the question 2-ish. One of the 5 core insights is we have a deep fear of revealing weakness, and that fear constantly puts us into approve versus improve paradox. And you just kind of touched on that a bit, that they all kind of fall, at least like man, the weakness category. And you say we often choose to prove ourselves at the expense of improving without even noticing what we're doing. What does all that mean? Proving ourselves versus improving. What does that mean in practical terms for men?
We like to prove our point. And we make a choice oftentimes in proving our point, or as some might call mansplaining. That we sometimes are choosing that instead of asking a question. Let's say, curiosity can actually scare a lot of guys, because if I ask a question, think about a young guy in a meeting, in a corporate setting, and he's sitting there thinking, there's a discussion going on. I think I'm supposed to know that, but I don't know that. But I'm not going to ask the question because I'm afraid they're going to think less of me. I'm not very good at my job. I'm not well informed. There's all sorts of things that sort of unconsciously and somewhat consciously can kind of race through a guy's head and go. And so now I'm in okay, do I want to try to prove what I know? So I'm going to raise my hand and make a point, or I'm going to raise my hand and ask a question.
God, I hate that. I hate the making the point masquerading as a question. It goes on and on and on and on. Like, there is no question here.
And we all, well, and this is, I mean, you've obviously listened to a lot of politicians. So Oh, but it happens to all of us, and we don't even recognize it. We don't recognize making that choice. We might recognize somewhere that, like, I don't want to reveal. I don't, I mean, we can't even ask for directions, Paul. If we can't ask for directions, how can we
I
ask?
don't think I'm your target market because literally my whole career was as a journalist. So I ask questions all the time, and they all came from a place of, uh, I don't know. And well, nobody asks directions anymore because we all have GPS. But before that,
That's true.
I was like, where the heck am I? I hate because I hate driving. I hate, like, if I could walk all the time, I'd be much happier, or take a bus or take a train or a plane. I hate driving. So if I was lost, I'd be like, God damn it, where am I? And I would ask, so
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
wrong? What's wrong with me, Jim? Why do I ask questions all the time, and why am I
Oh, I
okay
think there's a lot right
asking
with
for
you.
directions?
There's a lot right with you, actually. See, I will tell a story. But here's how, when you used to have to ask for directions,
Uh-huh.
here's how I would do it. I decide, I come in with a hypothesis. You don't just walk into a store somewhere in the middle of the country and go, I'm lost. You walk in
You
and
walk
say,
in and say, my kids think I'm lost, but what do they know? No,
hey,
no, you don't
no,
do
no,
that.
no.
Okay,
No, you walk
no.
in and say, listen, I'm trying to get to Boston. I think if I stay on 93 and I get off at this certain exit, that I'm going to get there. Is that right? So I'm coming in with a hypothesis. I'm not just saying I'm fucking lost.
This
And
seems
I've
so
been,
scary, Jim. I'm glad I didn't know you when you were in college because you went to school in Kansas, which
I
is the
did.
Great Plains, wide open, and I'm sure the drive between Kansas and Missouri, as they call it, Missouri.
Uh,
Uh,
as
if
the
you
rural politicians call it. Yes.
if you took a wrong turn, like, there's not exactly like a Starbucks on the corner or McDonald's on the corner to say you could just keep going.
Well, there might be a guy at the end of that road who's going to beat the shit out of you.
And his hypothesis would be you were lost and you didn't know where you were going. So
Well,
let me teach you to
if I
ask
came
for
in and said
directions.
I'm lost, he would definitely beat the shit out of me.
All right. I proving versus improving. I get that.
So let me
Okay.
tell you
Yeah. Tell
one
me.
other thing that happens in this. I think, or another example of it is, and I don't know if you've done this or not. I've done it in my life. I think a lot of guys do. We compartmentalize,
Mm-hmm.
and so we turn our life into sort of buckets that are all separated from each other, and we compartmentalize. We never actually reveal our total self to other people, or we hesitate to do that. So, I mean, the question is that, like, why do we compartmentalize so much? And so one of the reasons, I think, is we don't want to see other people to see totally who we are,
Hmm.
because they might see some kind of weakness. I mean, asking questions, seeing more. People see more of me. Uh, they're going to know that they're going to know my weaknesses, basically.
See,
So
Jim, on the podcast I did right before this, I covered up the little red dot on my nose from my daughter. And now with you, I feel I can show my weakness that a 7-year-old
wow.
turned quickly this weekend and showed.
Wow. Wow. I wouldn't call that weakness. I would call that a lack of quickness. Okay. I mean, you could have gotten out of the way.
Oh, the shame. There's that word, the shame. All right. Question 3-ish. Core insight. Number 2. Society and culture focus much more on the act of becoming a man than being one. I like this question. I remember years ago, I was on a train. I was a reporter for the Financial Times. My first big story ever. I saw Kurt Vonnegut, the great novelist. Kurt Vonnegut was on the train with his big nimbus of hair. And I went back and I talked to him, which because I knew that he would say something interesting. It'd be a good story. And one of the things he told me is that too often today, people aren't focusing on the becoming, that they just want to be. That was
Hmm.
one of his saying. This is 20 years ago. He's dead. But they wanted, and I think this is so interesting. Like the act of becoming, but you're taking this, turning it on its head. That becoming is the focus, but being a man is the thing that we don't put enough attention on. And so, why is that? And what are the expectations here that are being missed?
I think, I mean, it's interesting. You hear a lot more stories in popular culture, movies, etc., about someone's sort of path to manhood. And even a lot of the very famous psychologists and writers who write about manhood talk about that. And there's been traditions of kind of almost initiation rites, that are part of that. My struggle with
Which
it.
is interesting though, because those initiation rites often happen, like the core ages even today are, 16 you can drive, 18 you can vote, 21 you can have a drink. Some of the more historic initiation rites also happened in those, teenage years. Now, that's quite
Mhm.
young for people who are going to live until 80, 85, maybe 90. But of course, when these initiation rituals were created thousands of years ago, you may get eaten by a bear at 17. So it's probably
Yep.
important to get
Yeah.
you set up early
Yeah.
on. Why haven't we adapted? Why isn't there, something when you have a 30th birthday party, you have a 50th birthday party, and what do? You take a trip with your family or your friends, but there aren't those same rituals. Why don't they exist? And what would happen if there were, other markers throughout life?
I think one of the reasons why they don't exist is we can survive without them.
Mm.
I think that's a possibility. I think though my issue, I guess, as a strategist, when you think about what can we get men to focus on
Yeah.
differently here, is when you're becoming something, it just intimates a sense of arrival.
Mm.
I'm there. I'm
Yeah.
now a man. So I just had my first shot of Jack Daniels, or I'm driving, or I've joined the military, or I did something really courageous and
Yeah.
fought my way through. So now I'm a man. And I think that does a couple things to men. Um, One is now I'm here. I'm done.
Right.
I'm done. So now I'm a man. So, okay. That means that could make me feel like I have a right to certain things just because I'm a man now, even though I haven't really worked for them.
Huh.
It can also make me feel like I don't need to grow anymore. Growing for men, I mean, I feel like manhood should be thought of as more of a practice, more of a let's make this an ongoing expectation of growth. So if we could actually instill in men, you know, hey, you're supposed to keep growing.
Yeah.
You don't have it all figured out right now.
It's interesting you
Uh,
use that term because it's like you talk about the practice of law or, a doctor in private practice or, the term that gets used when you finish college is you don't have it's all over address. You have a commencement address because you're about to go and
true,
start
true.
on something else. Yeah. But whereas like an attorney or a doctor probably realize that you need to keep practicing, at it, even though, we'd like to think that they have some level of expertise. But they're always they're all they're always learning. They're always learning.
Yeah, yeah, and so what's wrong with that? I think it's interesting though that society kind of, and I'm not blaming. I mean, I think it's something we fall into ourselves as men.
Yeah.
But I think that's actually something we could change. It's just a matter of changing for men, changing what are your expectations,
Yeah. I love it.
and what do we expect from you? I mean, a lot of guys are talking today, and I totally support this. Maybe we should all have a year of service when we get out of high school or whatever,
Yeah.
instead of going straight to college or going into the trade or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that's a growth experience if you think about it, because I'm expanding beyond my bubble.
Right. And it
Um,
gets you out there beyond just academics and school and this and like, okay, maybe I don't want to be a marine biologist, whatever. And you can
exactly,
have that moment. Yeah. I love it.
exactly.
Um, Core insight number 3. I think this is a meaty one here, and that's you talk about the masculine myth man and the modern expectations of man. You know, what are those two constructs, and how do they play out? And talk about the social and cultural influences that come into play there.
Well, one of the things I realized, and I realized from doing all of the sort of deep dive strategy work that I've done over the years, is generalizing about things never gets to what what's really going on. So there's a lot of general talk about, men being a certain way or another. But what
Yeah.
I decided to do is I came up with a set of tensions that I think men experience based on those two very extreme narratives. And
And so,
so,
so lay out those narratives and what the tensions are. Yeah.
the narratives, masculine myth man, I think we know who that is. I mean, this is a traditional, tough, invincible, competitive,
Yeah.
kick ass and take names guy. Okay. Um, the modern expectations man, in some, is the guy who's not afraid to cry, and he's not afraid to show his emotions. He's not afraid to be vulnerable. Being tender is actually something that he wants to do and likes to do.
Yeah.
So that couldn't be those two narratives, which have also been politicized for sure. They tear a man apart because every man I've talked to doesn't want to be completely one of those men or the other. They
Right.
want to be somewhere in between. And so the trouble is, or the issues men face, again, without even really thinking about it with this level of specificity, is how can I be invincible and vulnerable?
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough question.
Like, how can I be short and tall? How can I be, fat and
Right,
skinny? How can I,
right,
yeah.
right. How can I have an unharmed nose and a nose with a
It all
dot on
depends how I turn. I can do that. I can turn this
it?
way and turn that
Now,
way.
see, you're working your way through it right there. But how can I be tough and tender? How can I be competitive and collaborative?
The
Um,
Capitol Grill does a really good job of this. If you ever order a filet at the Capitol Grill, they cook the best filet. It's a gajillion dollars, but literally, it's crispy on the outside and then nice and tender on the inside.
I just, as a vegetarian, you're making me feel. The steak
Oh
analogy
yeah,
is really working for me. By the way, okay. Um, so anyway, what I found in interviewing close to 200 guys
yeah,
is there are some guys who have figured out, instead of this being an or decision, I have to be this or that,
right.
is I can be this and that. I can hold these two parts of myself together, and see that I can be invincible and I can be at times, and I can be vulnerable at times, and I can figure out how to do that. And those guys, I'm sort of calling the next American man, because
Mm,
I feel like the next real man out there
yeah.
is the guy who can combine both of those things, because they're both very clear but very distinct realities that I think of men are facing.
I love that. One of the things we did, 3 years ago when we started the company of dads is we wanted to, talk about these men who are in this role of go-to parent, who are caregivers, who are supporting, their spouses if they have one, or and always being sort of allies at work. But at the same time, we didn't want it to feel like it was less masculine to be in this role. And so, very purposely, one of the first podcasts we did was with a guy named Najee Good, who won a Super Bowl playing for the Philadelphia Eagles
Mm.
against the New England Patriots. He sacked Tom Brady, intercepted Tom Brady. 10 years in the NFL, he's about as masculine as you can
Yeah,
imagine. That's sort of the archetype, kind of an NFL player and a Navy SEAL, or so the archetypes of masculine men.
yeah.
Um, but he has two daughters. He is divorced. His wife isn't really in their family anymore. So he is a solo dad. He's a lead dad, but he's also a solo dad. And there he's out there with these two, little girls doing all the things that, both mom and dad have to do with them. And he fully embraces it. So he's exactly the next American man, on a super high
Totally,
level. So
totally.
I love that. I
Well,
love.
so I mean, the thing that, and I think the reason I immediately loved the concept of lead dad
Mm.
when I heard about it, is it's doing exactly that.
Right.
I think the concept, I mean, and the way that you guys have been able to change the vocabulary, I love that it's lead dad. I love that it's lead dad, not lead parent,
Right.
because that's helping a guy deal with his masculinity that sometimes gets in the way of just being a better person and doing
Yeah.
what's right, all of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
We picked it intentionally just for that reason. So you say, okay, this is something I want to embrace and move forward into it, not something I'm falling back and giving up on. So
No, and we could make a side deal on this, Paul, but I'd like to talk to some of your lead dads. I really would, because
let's
I
let's see
think
how
that
you go with the next two
it'd be
questions,
great.
Jim. You're in the lightning round here.
Okay.
Core insight number 4.
Uh-huh.
Men want to grow, but don't think they can without feeling less of a man. And then here, growth has been stigmatized as feminine. What does all that mean? What we talk so much about personal growth. We talk about, at least in the corporate setting, you want to grow, you want to get the next promotion, you want to become the vice president. Da, 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 da. But why is it that, are you saying that men are stunted? Or are you saying that men are growing but just not talking about it? What are you saying in that fourth core insight?
I'm saying that men aren't growing as much as they could. They're not advancing as much as they could, because there's a stigma to opening yourself up. There's a stigma to being sensitive.
Mm.
There's a stigma to saying, by just by the nature of saying I want to grow. If you really want to grow, it means you're going to ask questions. It means you're going to admit that you don't know things. It means that you want to understand instead of just knowing things. And understanding is something that just requires, honestly, more emotional awareness, and more emotional intelligence in a way. And so you can't just rationally understand things. You have to go deeper than that. And I think when guys do that, I think sometimes, and not every. I mean, this is I hate generalizing, so this isn't every man, but sometimes guys get a little glance, a little sideways glance if they're trying to. It's like, oh, wait a minute, you're going on a retreat with other men to understand yourself better. Like, what's wrong with you, man? I mean, not that somebody's going to say that to a guy's face, but I think a guy can feel that. And
which is interesting because you would cloak it. Like, yeah, what are you talking about, man? I'm not doing that. We're gonna go fishing. We're gonna go hunting. We're gonna go on a golf trip. No, you're going to a retreat. There's no fishing. No. Just guys.
Well, it's one of the reasons that a lot of men's stuff like that, where men are gathering together to talk about themselves and to try to understand themselves and express themselves better, are centered around activities.
Yeah.
So you can say, I'm going fly fishing with a bunch of guys. So you can say that. So you're much more likely to say that to another guy than maybe your wife, right? Who knows why you're really going.
Yeah. I love it.
So,
core insight 5, and I really want to spend a little time on this one because we've heard so much about the epidemic of loneliness among men, middle-aged men, and correlation of being detached, a suicide, obviously at the extreme of this. But you talk in the fifth core insight is you talk about something that you call only-ness, and you say that only-ness is a bigger and broader problem than loneliness. So unpack this. What is only-ness and what problem is it causing?
So loneliness is feeling like I'm the only one going through something. We don't tend to share any of the problems or deeper issues that we have with anyone else, because we can tend to believe, and again, this isn't all men, but we can tend to believe there's a certain honor in gutting it out completely on our own. And also so that's one part of loneliness. Another part of loneliness is I'm the only one who's climbed Everest 27 times or whatever. Okay. That's not real.
Have you really?
So now we just talk about that, right?
What?
No, or I'm the only one. Like you hear a lot of, and I've talked to a lot of CEOs
Yeah.
who really feel this, that they can't talk to anybody else about anything because it's up to them,
Mm.
and they feel boxed in and sort of honored, like some sense of honor, all at the same time, which is a complex set of emotions, and so I think it's broader. That I think loneliness and onlyness are two different things. I think onlyness can lead to loneliness,
Okay.
if you will. Okay.
Is this why groups like, YPO and stuff like that to bring executives, is this why they exist to sort of break down that sense of
I
loneliness, or I'm
think
not?
so.
Yeah.
I think so in that way. But so I'll give you a quick example. I'm starting a men's organization that's really trying to get men to help other men.
Hmm.
Okay. And one of the things that these guys, we sort of ran a little pilot, and in the debrief, every single guy said, "You know what I love the most about this? Knowing I'm not the only one."
Mm. Interesting.
And it's little stuff, Paul.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
what was
oh,
that? That this isn't like running a Fortune 500 company. So what
no,
is it where
no.
they felt
But
like
it's
the
like,
only one?
I have I was running out of the door this morning, and I had this huge business idea, and I'm really focused on that. And my wife, who stays at home, she says, can you please empty the dishwasher? And he's like, God, like I really want to go do that,
Right.
but I really know I should stay here and empty the dishwasher. So this literally happened. I had a guy talking about that in a group. Every other guy is nodding their head and going, "Yeah." And so guys just don't talk about little things like that. We tend to shoulder them and to think, if I just push through this, it's
Yeah.
going to be okay.
That's such a
Uh,
great point because you can push through things early on, and then over time they build up, and you're pushing through more and more and more, little
yeah,
things. We talk about in relationships. We have this thing called the paper test. We say that resentment in a relationship doesn't emerge fully formed. It's kind of like dust under a couch. It builds up and builds up and builds up, but you don't really know it's there unless you move or buy a new couch, unless you sort of acknowledge it and you talk about it. Like, obviously there's going to be some level of resentment. There's only in this seems the same thing. Like when you get together with one of your dad friend, your male friends, you say, "Hey, you know what? This happened," and it's not even like you're complaining about your spouse or your kids. You're just, if I'm correct here, you're feeling that other people are going through something incredibly similar to what you're going through, and then it gives you a moment like, "Huh, okay, all right, I guess this is okay." Is that fair?
it's a powerful thing. And I think I got to believe that the Company of Dads is offering that to guys, honestly,
Yeah.
who are coming back to just the concept of lead dad, and somebody going, oh my God, now I see, oh, there's other guys like me.
Well, that's exactly
Oh,
it. Yeah.
shit.
The
I mean, that's,
25 million men in the United States are lead dads, could be lead dads, and that's a third of all fathers. So when we created this group, it's like you're just going to come here and be like any other guy, any other man, but you're going to talk about things that are slightly different than the other two thirds of, or very different even for the other two thirds of fathers in America, but not really different from the guys in this group. And I think that's been the real power of it, is that whether you're a Super Bowl champion who played 10 years in the NFL, or just a regular guy, you have more things in common than you do differences, because you share this journey as a lead dad.
and one thing I've learned about, I mean, in talking to all types of men, age, sexual orientation, role in the household, um, ethnicity, income, all the whole things, we actually have way more in common
Yeah.
in general than we'd like to think. But I mean, what we have in common is a lot of pretty deep stuff. What do we really want out of life?
Yeah.
How do we see ourselves being somebody who matters? Those kinds of things are universal. And again, we don't stop and think about them. Um, Partly because we're not asked to, partly
Mhm.
because we think we're too busy, partly because we don't think we need to.
Yeah.
and then all sorts of other reasons you could throw in there, like the game is on,
Right.
um, or whatever. Um,
Jim Chastain, amazing. Thank you for being my guest on the Company Does podcast today. I know you're doing this research, working toward a book. If men are listening to this and say, hey, I want to talk to Jim, I want to be part of this, how do they find you? How do they become part of the research that you're doing?
you can find me. I'm on Substack at Stuff Guys Don't Talk About. I'm also on TikTok. Talk about being vulnerable, by the way. Wow, I don't know. At my age on TikTok, it's weird, but I'm doing it.
It's actually shameful, Jim. It's shameful. I'll use that word.
Thank you. Gosh, you're so good at making me feel good about myself. I don't know how you do it.
It shows great strength for you to be on there. So you're not weak, but it is shameful.
There you go. Yeah, and on LinkedIn, you could just ping me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to. I really would love for guys to participate because it's a perspective that I think needs more of a voice, and anything I can do to kind of bring that out would be really satisfying to me.
Love it. All right, Jim Chastain, check out his Substack, Stuff Guys Don't Talk About. Thank you again for being my guest today.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Company of Dads podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in week after week. Just want to use this moment here to thank the people who make it possible. Number one, of course, Helder Mira, who is our podcast editor. We also have Skip Cherryholmes, who many of you know from the Lead Dad Diaries. He's taken over our social media. Terry Brennan is helping us with our audience development, and Emily Servin is there each and every day helping with the web development. I can't do any of this without an amazing board of advisors. So I just want to say thank you to all of you who help, and I want to say thank you to everyone who listens, and hopefully you'll tune in again next week. Thanks so much.